If you want to do any sort of film print emulation, this is the tool to use. There's no point in trying to do it yourself. If you just go and Google a film that you like that was shot on film, you'll probably find the film stock that it was shot on within Dehancer right here. It just looks really good. Hey, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about Dehancer Pro, my favorite plugin when it comes to DaVinci Resolve. I have graded so many projects using Dehancer. It's pretty much my go-to plugin when creating looks and when trying to emulate film. And I have used it on pretty much everything from music videos to documentaries to commercials for Instagram, and it's really an amazing tool. But today is pretty much a full breakdown of how to use it and why we would use it, and I'm going to grade 3 shots just using Dehancer. I'm not really going to do too much beforehand, maybe just some white balance and some exposure balancing before, but then we can show you what this effect really can get you. So if you want to know anything more about Dehancer, please go check them out in the link in the description. There is so much information when it comes to film emulation and everything you could ever think of. They're really great, so please go check it out. It's an amazing tool. You can also get a 10% discount, by the way, so just use the code HUNT10 and you'll get a discount, which is really cool. Jumping into DaVinci Resolve, I'm going to show you how to grade some amazing shots. Thank you to my friend Dylan Marriott for letting us use his shots. You can check his Instagram in the link in the description. So a couple things to talk about first is that if you want to use Dehancer, you need to make sure that it's at the end of your image pipeline, meaning that if you have a node tree, you need to use the plugin right at the end. That's how they recommend you use it, and it just is what gives you the best results. Okay, cool. So all we've got on this clip is just a transform, which is going from red log to Rec 709. And so on this next clip, I'm going to bring in Dehancer just like that, and already you can see what it's doing, which is quite a lot. Now that we've dragged on our Dehancer plugin, we can actually just go through this one by one. So right up here we have our input, which is where we can pretty much do exactly what I've done with my color space transform, but here in Dehancer, which is great. So you can go through, choose your color space, or you could even choose your camera just like this and come through a bunch of brands, which is quite extensive, or we can just leave it at Rec 709, which is what I'm going to do. We also have exposure compensation, which is how we can adjust our exposure levels, which is really helpful. We can also do temperature compensation, which works really nicely, as well as our tint. So pretty much exactly what you could do over here with temp and tint sliders. Defringe as well, and defringe radius. So you really get to have control. You just have to make sure that you enable your defringe, and defringe is pretty much just going to help with correcting certain things from lenses, which is really helpful. Let's move on to our film, and I think this is where Dehancer really starts to shine, is with their film profiles, and they have hundreds of film profiles. I mean, look at all of this. There's so many film profiles that have been scientifically created and designed, and it's like, if you want to do any sort of film print emulation, this is the tool to use. There's no point in trying to do it yourself. Honestly, these are scientists, people that have gone through just incredible research and years and years of trial and error to make this happen. And there's just so many. I mean, it's really great. If you just go and Google a film that you like that was shot on film, you'll probably find the film stock that it was shot on within Dehancer right here. So if we look at the Agfa Color Portrait XPS 160, I mean, this is what they shot some of Moonlight on, and Moonlight is, you know, a renowned film for its color and what it looks like. And then we've got our push pull, which is just, it's so much to explain. Essentially, it's just going to help us get 2 different feels from that film stock. And if you want to do some more research, you should definitely go and check it out on Dehancer's website. So we've got all of these different Kodak ones here, and I really do like the Kodak 250D. You can also try the 500T. What I like to do is pull it all the way down, so we've done a full-on 2-stop pull or push. I always get those two confused. Then we have got our film developer, and this is essentially where you can do a little bit of your I guess grading or development of your film. So you can push your contrast up. You just got to make sure it's enabled. You can push up your contrast just like this. I'm going to go Shift F, which is going to allow me to see more of the picture. And then you can also do gamma correction, which is really helpful. This is kind of like dropping your mid-tones a little bit. It's like pulling them down a bit. I do like to use Dehancer to get a really quick look of how an image can feel. We can also increase our color boost, which is going to saturate the least saturated colors first in the saturation process. I mean, that's looking pretty cool just like that, right? We've got a decent looking feel going on there. We can also use our film compression. Film compression is going to help us just sort of flatten our image in some way. So essentially what it's actually doing is helping us retain highlights in a great way. If this was a shot with a bright sky in the background, we would be able to use film compression to really help us get a little bit more detail and compress the highlights within our sky so that we have a little bit more of a filmic look to our footage. But essentially we could affect the white point, we could affect the impact of the compression, the tonal range, so you really get to control what is being compressed and exactly how much compression is happening, as you can see here. So I'm just going to reset that because we don't really need that on this. You can also use your expand, which helps you set your black points for your project. I really find this so helpful because when it comes to film emulation and using technical LUTs, sometimes the black points just look so, it's hard. Like you really got to spend a lot of time working to get your black points to work nicely. Because otherwise they're super blue or they've just been so compressed and so they're really washy like they are right now. But with this, with the expand, you can really pull your black points down so that you have a nice dark black points like that. If I reset this, you'll see how washed out it is. And then that's me pulling it down again. So now we have like there's more contrast in the image, but it just feels more controlled. Like your black points are more black than they are washy like this. Same with your whites. You can really control the range that's been affected within your image by Dehancer through expand, and it's really helpful. Moving on, we have print. This is another favorite tool of mine within Dehancer. If we come down and we choose any one of these, we've got some different looks that we can work through. So linear, there's nothing going on. Cine on film log is going to pretty much take us to Cine on film log, which is another type of log that we don't want to use right now. We could also choose to use Fujifilm 3513, which is a very famous print film, and as you can see there, it looks really good. We've got target white, which means we can essentially push it all the way up to 2 or bring it down to -2, and that's going to affect the target white point, which we'd actually usually talk in terms of D60, D65 or D55. D55 being -2 within Dehancer right here, which would be a lot warmer, as you can see, and D65 would be 2 and that would be a lot cooler, and then D60 is pretty much neutral. The great thing about this is that you can achieve a really nice looking tone curve with warmth in the highlights, and with the Fujifilm a lot of green in the shadows, which really works nicely on a project like this, which is a horror film. We can also do exposure adjustments in this. We can do tonal contrast adjustments here. We can do color density adjustments as well, and this is really going to help us get that filmic feel. I mean, you can already see what it's doing here. If we pull it all the way up, you can see the density within our colors right over there. So reset that and up, and you can see the skin tone just takes on a deeper, richer feel. It's not really increasing the saturation too much, but it's increasing the density of the hues without it kind of just feeling gross. So I'm going to pull it up to sort of around here. Analog range limiter is really helpful for if we have a lot of contrast in our image already. Sometimes these print films don't sit too well with footage in the sense that they already have a lot of contrast by nature. So allowing us to have something like analog range limiter is really helpful because it sort of limits the range in which this affects our footage and just helps us to get a bit of a more natural feel. So I'm going to use the Kodak 2383. It's probably my favorite print film, and let's leave it on there. Color Head is really an amazing tool to use. It works very similarly to how our offset works because both were created to emulate how printer lights work, which pretty much is just going to affect your whole image in one go. So if I'm pulling out blue, it's going to introduce yellow, right? If I'm subtracting green, it's going to introduce magenta. And if I'm subtracting red, it's going to introduce cyan. Very similarly to how it would if I come back here, with a white balance. If I subtract blue, it's going to introduce yellow, just like that. So they work very similarly in that sense. However, Dehancer have done a great job in making it so that this works within an algorithm, and it works a little bit differently to the offset. So very similar in terms of their application, but they work very differently, and you can look at that on their website as well. I'm just trying to give us a real-time look at how all of these effects work on footage. Dehancer is where you're going to get all of your amazing information. The reason why is because I've spent hours there, and I bet you will too if you're interested. So what we can do is, in here we can really come in and be creative. We can try and combine these different colors to be able to get a unique feel to our image. I'm just going to play around a little bit. Maybe we want to do something that's a little bit on the edge of the green feel, something similar to our Fujifilm print film, but just not exactly the same. And so as you can see, like, we've really gone in a different direction using our color head. But look how good the skin tones look. And I think that's, for me, is what has stood out with Dehancer, is that your skin tones often just still look really, really good no matter how far you're pushing it. What's also great about the color head is we can do split toning in the color head as well. So we can change our shadows tone by pushing and pulling. So warm is going to be 100, cool is going to be -100. But I just wanted you to pay attention to the skin tones. I know that this is the shadows tone, but just look how well those skin tones are holding up, especially here in the forehead. And I really like that about Dehancer. So we can change our midtones, and you can see now we're obviously affecting some of the skin. But here we can also bring in some cooler tones, and then the highlights, we can bring in some warmth as well, like this here. Just make it nice and warm. So let's turn that off and on again. Preserve exposure is something to do with the technical side of this tool, and essentially what it does is it just, because how color head work in real life within actual film treatment is you're exposing the film to a certain color filter, and as you do that, it's going to increase or decrease the exposure level. And so preserving exposure allows you obviously to not change your exposure within that process, and they have built that into this tool as well, which I think is really cool, because as I said earlier, sometimes it can get a little wishy-washy when you do film print emulation, and your shadows can get a little wishy, and this way we can actually just keep control of those shadows. And so here we have the effect that they're probably most well renowned for, which is their film grain. And I must say it is really good. It took me a while to actually know how good it was, and I think that's because they have built their profiles really amazingly. So it's all built to emulate the grain structure of those different types of film stocks, or those different types of film. So 8mm, 16mm, 35, you know, they all look different, especially at different ISO levels. And so they've done a great job of making it look very similar, but I think because on every piece of footage is going to look different. The way that their film grain works is not necessarily just an overlay, it actually works with an algorithm so that it works within your image. So it actually analyzes your image and works with the image rather than just being something that you put over. I don't know if you've ever used the free overlays that you find on YouTube, but they don't work. This works really well. So we're going to turn it on. I really do like to dial in my grain when I'm working. I do like 65mm grain a lot. It's just much more subtle, which I think works really well, especially for the projects that I work on. So we can see it right here. I do like to come back to custom, and then you can really play and dial everything in, which I think it's amazing. The fact that you can adjust your shadows, midtones, and highlights, and how much grain you're seeing within those tonal regions is just incredible for me. I like to push it up within the midtones and bring my highlights up there, sort of bring my shadows down. Let's bring chroma down, because that introduces like the red noisy grain, which I'm not the biggest fan of. And somewhere around there. Let's go here, full screen. I just want to put a loop on, and let's click play. It is quite a resource intensive plugin, so you will see that your system will struggle a little bit, but here, especially in the hand, wow, I mean, just look around the hand there, like that grain just looks so great. And over here as well, looks super good. I do think that we need a little bit of noise reduction done, so I'm just gonna put some noise reduction on, just because the image, the actual footage is quite noisy. It just looks really good. Let's see what this image is looking like. As you can see, I haven't even spent a lot of time, and our image is looking really good already. Let's go back to this view. Let's move on to our halation. So the halation works very similarly to the film grain in the sense that it's based off of 8mm, 16mm, 35 and 65mm film, but it does have something called remjet. A remjet is pretty much something that was put into film stocks to help control halation a bit. Halation happens when film is exposed to light. That light then bounces back off the camera body and re-exposes the film, especially the red, and then gives us this really beautiful looking effect. So without the remjet, it looks really strong. With the remjet, you can see it's a lot less strong. The cool thing is that you could just go in and use 35mm halation, which was based off of what it would look like on 35mm film stock, but you can also come in and dial in what it's going to look like in the sense of how you want it by increasing your amplify, and sometimes like that. That's looking pretty cool. And there you can see this halation right there. The great thing about it for me is that it really just looks natural and feels really good with the footage. It doesn't feel like something that we've added in later. I'm going to go back to our last shot, and you can see it starting to pop up here in his eye. So it's always good to make sure that you check through your whole scene. So let's go to 35mm, and that's looking better already. So that's off, and that's on. But yeah, especially here in harsh highlights, you're going to see it quite a lot, and it does give it a very filmic look. It's so specific to film where you would have halation, and so having well-used halation is just going to make your footage look that much better. But you just have to make sure that you're using good halation, which is exactly what Dehancer is. Let's move on to bloom. Bloom is pretty much where your highlights are going to have a bit of a more bloomy effect to them. They're going to have sort of a glow, and it works so much better than the DaVinci glow effect. I find that the bloom within Dehancer is just so great. It really softens your image nicely, which is great because now, especially like this camera that I'm filming on, A7S III, it's so sharp. You can see like every pore on my skin, and it's a little too much. And so working in a digital world, being able to add something like bloom in a natural way, which is going to bloom your highlights just ever so slightly, and it's just going to take the sharp edge off of your image, it just makes a world of a difference. So I'm going to push it all the way up so we can see. Again, you've got all your different film stocks to emulate. Let's go to 35mm film and pull this down a little bit. We can mask as well so you can see what it looks like in terms of where it's picking up, and that's looking nice to me. So that's on and that's off, and already those two things just soften the image. It really feels filmic to me. This looks incredibly good. The only thing that I would do is probably increase my grain size and grain amount, just so that we've got a little bit more going on, something like that. That's looking good to me. Maybe a little bit less chroma as well, and probably leave it somewhere there. So within the matter of, I don't know what it's been, like maybe 5 minutes, maybe 7 minutes, we've already graded 2 shots that look really filmic and beautiful. I mean, look at that. Those 2 shots they look beautiful. We haven't even added a lot of saturation. If we were to go back into our clip node graph, come into our saturation node and put in some saturation, like you'll really see it come to life. There it is there. It's looking good. Let's come back here and do the same thing. Saturation node. Let's pull in some saturation somewhere around there. Off and on, off and on. And you can really see, like, once we start putting in saturation and you have a good white balance done, Dehancer just makes your image look so incredibly good. It brings down the redness and skin tones a lot so that it actually looks more realistic. Digital cameras just do something really weird to skin tones, I find at least, and Dehancer helps me control it in such a nice cinematic way. So that's pretty much what I use Dehancer for. I don't really go much further than that, but I am going to walk you through the rest of it just because there are some really amazing effects that you can still use, such as film damage, which, as you guessed it, is going to add some film damage to your image. And so if we play it back now, you should see some damage come. I'm just going to go to 8mm just to make sure, and there you can already see like all the little specks and everything. It's really cool, isn't it? And obviously it's based off of actual film, so it looks like real film, like it would. So it's not going to be like a crazy amount all the time, because if you bring it down, obviously it's not going to be, but also because with actual film, it's not in every single frame. It's, you know, it's random, and that's how it worked. And so that's how it works within Dehancer as well. Same with the effects like film breath and gate weave. I mean, gate weave is pretty much like as the film is running through the camera, it's going to have a bit of a shake and a bit of a move, which is really cool. And so this emulates that nicely. So you can see it there. Let's turn it off. And now it's not moving as much, but it's really amazing to play around with. And if you're really going that extra mile to get that film feel, those are two effects that you want to be using. Let's go to our Overscan. This is where we can get the amazing Overscan looks that you get with film. And so here we can emulate like Super 35, Super 8mm, standard 16mm. I mean, you can just play around and get some amazing feels going on. And like if you want to make it look like actual film and get this proper indie feel, this is the way to do it. I mean, you have so many options. You can control your edges, you can control your aspect ratio, you can control your perforation modes. So obviously negative or positive, positive being white, negative being black, or you can turn it off completely. You just have so much control. It's so much better than trying to use overlays off of YouTube or something like that. You know, the free ones, we've all used them. You can change your film orientation. I mean, come on, where do you get that? You can also change the exposure within. You can change the scale. So like you really have so much control. You don't get this anywhere else. I mean, you really, not at this level, at least in my experience. Vignette is also something that's super great. They have done a great job of making the vignettes feel really good. I just have to turn off my overscan for now so you can really get the feel. So this is where we can change our exposure. I'm going to bring the feather all the way down, and here you can see where the vignette is affecting. So we're going to change the size to go up to around here, and then feather it like that, and then we can bring down the exposure. So on and off, on and off. It's such a natural feeling vignette. To me, it feels better than actually just going in and pulling my gain down, which is what I usually do. This just feels filmic. I don't know how, I can't explain why, but I really do like the effect that it gives the footage, and it helps just frame your viewer's eye, and that's what vignettes are for. But this vignette just does it very nicely. We can also look at false color within our Dehancer, which is super great for monitoring your levels really quickly and coming in. You've also got clipping indications, which are really helpful. We have our output, so you can actually adjust how much all of this affects your footage. And to me, that's, come on, that's next level. I mean, the fact that you have so much control already, and now we have control of how much we want control. That's really cool. I'm actually going to bring it down to 80 and leave it at there, because it does just give us a little bit of like that in-between space. We can also create LUTs from here, which is very helpful for quickly exporting LUTs. And then we've got our options for how quickly we want to be able to work, high, slow. So our quality is going to be high here, which means we're going to work slowly, normal, and we're going to work fast. But I mean, we've been working on fast this whole time, and it still looks incredible. So yeah, there you have it, guys. We have just done an amazing walkthrough. We've been very quick just so that we can have a quick look at all the tools and effects within Resolve and within Dehancer. And as you can see, we can get an incredible feel and look to our footage really quickly just using Dehancer. I've hardly done anything within our actual editing software, so I've not really gone and added too much saturation, or I haven't even done white balances here. and already our footage just looks so good. I mean, so this is across the whole project, and I've just come back to another clip that I've done nothing to. Look how good this looks. It looks so incredible. I mean, his skin just looks so good, and usually skin is the giveaway when it comes to bad grading or bad plugins, but this looks so good across the whole project. I mean, even coming out here to this shot, which is really dark. Yeah, it's dark and the halation's a little bit much, but we've done nothing to the shot. We've done no exposure adjustments. We've done absolutely nothing to it, and it really looks good. So if we were just to bring up our exposure a little bit, you can already see there's more in the shadows. There's just a lot going on. So anyway, Dehancer is really incredible, especially if you're using it as the way to bring a look and all your creative, and you've done good color balancing, color management underneath. Come back, add your saturation, add your contrast, do a little bit more secondaries to really make the image feel how you want it to feel. But with Dehancer, you're just already so ahead of the game. So definitely check it out. So if you are interested in using Dehancer, if you already have Dehancer, that's amazing. Please go check out their website. There is so much information for you to learn even more about it. But also, if you are wanting to purchase the license, please use my discount code so that you can get 10% off. It also does support my channel, which is really helpful. So yeah, anyway, see you in the next one.